Garmagat, Chair, and thank you to my own colleagues, Rory O'Murco and Darren O'Rourke, for allowing me in today. I really wanted to be here to discuss this because obviously, like Dara, I'm from Mayo. And in the context of the Atlantic Economic Corridor and the importance of the Western Rail Corridor to that. And I want to kind of just exchange maybe back and over. The first question I want to ask you, is the Western Rail Corridor shovel ready? If the funding was to be provided tomorrow morning, the strong business case that's obviously been made by Dr. John Bradley, I have read that with note, and I have read the other reports as well. And one of the weaknesses that we have is that where you have any cost-benefit analysis done, if population is to be the variable, the overriding variable, we will never, ever get anything done. And we are getting really tired in the West and in Mayo of the double-speak that's going on around the Western Rail Corridor, the Atlantic Economic Corridor. I was absolutely delighted with the Atlantic Economic Corridor because I thought, at last, this is something we can hang everything to. We can have the vital pieces of infrastructure there. We know where we're going. There's a strategic joined-up approach here. And I commended government for it and everybody involved in it. And I want to maybe come to you after this, Mike. You know, where has that gone? And why is there so much double-speak around these projects and around the initiatives? But my first question is the Atlantic Economic Corridor shovel ready?
Yeah. Yes, it is. Iran Road have confirmed that to us, that if they got the go-ahead, they would be prepared to move on it without delay. The first thing that would have to happen is that there'd have to be further clearance on the track. The plans would probably be revised because although the plans are already in existence, they would have to be doctored and tailored for the present situation. But the reality is that if the government were to finance the Western Rail Corridor, which will cost, according to Dr. Bradley's estimate, 154 million, that it could proceed without very much delay and that it could be completed within 3 to 4 years. We're talking about the section from Athenry to Claremorris, which would link, obviously, Ballina Inland Port, then to Foynes Port, to Cork, to Waterford, and would obviously link the towns of Claremorris, Castlebar, Westport, Ballina, Tuam to our regional capital in Galway.
And Eamon Ryan has obviously said in your statement that you have here, and I've heard Eamon Ryan saying around how important it is in connecting that all up. And this is why I'm confused. If there is so much political support for it, and every politician I speak to, bar very, very few, seem to recognise the importance of it. Why isn't it happening? And then why do we get a 10T report which leaves it out of the core projects again? We said after COVID, we said during COVID, the first thing was there was a sudden realisation, the imbalance of the regions, and we are going to do things different. We are not going to set back the way we were before. And it just seems like now that everything is settling back in again, and we're not going to address the regional imbalance. I just want to ask you, Mike, around the Atlantic Economic Corridor, where is it and how important is rail infrastructure to that?
Okay, so where we're at is, I'll break it up into sort of two phases. When we brought the concept about first, we had to get a lot of buy-in from people, particularly from the business communities, to get people along the axis to work together. The task force that was formed by Michael Ring on the day and worked very well for a number of years, that task force basically went about making very specific, I would call them enabling changes that have helped us quite a bit. The first was that the local authorities along the 10 authorities started to work together, and that's been proven very good. When Minister Kine and Minister Kenny were chairs, they both drove that, and they drove the funding of people within the councils to specifically focus and work together along the corridor. So we've got that collaboration, if you like, working. And when we started that at the very outset, councils, local authorities were very much working in their own framework. Now we know of several instances where they're coming together. So we have the case of Ireland West Airport, where councils are working together to make sure that happens. We even have a better case in the Shannon Estuary with Shannon's
Can I
Point.
just ask you, do they all agree to the Western Rail Corridor and the importance of it? Is there a unanimous agreement there on how important rail infrastructure is?
Between the councils, the
Yes,
local authorities?
local authorities.
As I understand it, they do, yes.
Right.
As I've never heard any objection.
Okay.
So I think we've gone through that phase. I think the problem that we have now, though, is that it's about ambition. It's about where people want to go. And that's why I gave those numbers on GVA. Because if you want to move the dial on GVA, if you really want to correct the imbalance, then you have to put in very significant investment to create some form of value-add activity, like large fabrication plants, large biopharma plants, and so on. And to do that, you need to have this backbone with all of the utilities prioritised on it, so those utilities can be used. So we know, for example, that if we take one of the proposed developments outside of Galway for the data centre, we know that that was only possible because it's the only place.
And Mike, I'm going to, because we have really limited time here. So the question that's coming in my head is, why are we then gone to a region in transition, and why do we see from the recent CSO figures that the income inequality is 3 times, the gap for the income equality is 3 times larger?
Yes, and so, Deputy, the simple answer to your question is, we are not setting out clearly from a political point of view and from a government point of view, we are not setting out what the economic guidance should be. What is the level of economic activity that you expect along that axis? Now, if you set that out correctly, then you won't be in here talking about opening the railway. It'll just be a done deal because it's obvious you have to do it. So my belief is the gap is that the political system and the government system does not have the ambition that it needs, and it's not setting out the economic guidance that's necessary to allow the type of investment we're talking about to come about. That's a short answer to your question.
And I just want to give an opportunity maybe to Mr. Feeney to contribute. Like, we're looking at such a small amount of money, 154 million.
Yeah.
Why are we back here again and again? It just doesn't make sense.
With all due respect, that's a political question. And the people in the Department of Transport and the ministers in charge of the Department of Transport over the last number of years, going back a number of years now, have maybe they'd be better placed to answer that than I am. But I know that, you see, rail can be, like, we're not rail enthusiasts, by the way. We're enthusiasts for the West of Ireland and the economic and social development of our region. That's what we are, and rail helps that.
But we also, in terms of climate change and emissions, obviously.
Exactly, all of that. And those things have caught up with us since, and the €2 for a litre of petrol and the climate change stuff, they've all bolstered the case for the reopening of the Western Rail Corridor. Look, there's just as a small microcosm, there's 1,000 acres of land, state-owned land, earmarked for development between Athenry and Galway City. 1,000 acres. Every acre of it is served by this railway, by the railway. So you could get on a railway for whether you, and Mike talked about the possibilities of growth, but we were in the last 1 or 2, and by the way, no decision has been made on the biggest of those projects yet. It looks slightly kind of, so slightly of a remove at this stage, but no decision has been made. But you could get on a train in Claremorris or Castlebar, get straight in onto site into 1,000 acres for economic development. Those places are going to drive the West of Ireland. We can't give up any inch of advantage we have. And, you know, the Western Rail Corridor is a fundamental part of that. We've Bonham Quay development in Galway City. It's an office development in the city, no parking, because it's right beside the railway station. And that's the reason it got its planning permission, because it's right beside the railway, minimal parking. And 1,000 office jobs there. You're going to have to come in on a train, get off the train, go to work. So rail is the future.
How concerned are you around the 10T recent?
We've been let down on the 10T time and time again. And there's no other words for it. We're extremely disappointed.
Okay.
If I just might make one other comment on the 10T. And this is where, you know, we do our own sort of search and lobby inside of Brussels to find out, you know, how do we move this thing forward. And the answer is as recent as from an advisor 2 days ago. The answer is always, well, we think what you're doing is a great idea and it's important and it's within what Europe is trying to do, but your government is not supporting it and we're not hearing it from them. So you better convince them that you want to do this. And that's why, that's my understanding today as why we do not have that piece of railway included in the 10T.
Yeah, it's my understanding as well, because obviously we have gone to Brussels and we've got the same answers there as well. So I think there's very serious questions to be asked around it. The rail review is our last opportunity. I think the Minister has said that that's going to be published in the summer, in late summer. We really need to see this project in the rail review properly recognised. I'm covering the Education Committee as well, the USI, and all of the stakeholders there are really concerned about the lack of transport. We have the Technological University, which we are thrilled and delighted about. But the impact that that's going to have is going to be curtailed if we don't have the public transport infrastructure to go with that. So,
if I may just make a point. The Minister said in the Dáil on Thursday last that he now expects this report to be ready around the end of the year. So it's continually moving back in time. Okay. But I agree with all that you've said about it, particularly about education, because I've worked in education myself all my life. And I believe that it's one thing to educate the young people of the west of Ireland and then give them a ticket to go and live in Dublin or somewhere else. What we need to do in the west of Ireland, and what speaks to what Mike Devan has been describing, is we need to educate our young people as we do in Sligo and Galway and Limerick, and then we need to keep them in the west of Ireland. And that will be the biggest beneficiary of that will be Dublin and the greater Dublin area, which, as we all know, is suffering enormously from overcrowding and traffic issues and all kinds of issues. This is not an east versus west confrontation by any manner of means. We all have relations here in Dublin. I was educated in Dublin. I have no issue with any of that. What we are looking at here is we're looking at a situation where a large part of Ireland, north of a line from Galway to Dublin, has been seriously neglected, the border, west and northwest region. If Arab does not recognise that and come forward with proposals for the development of rail in that area, as well as the billions which have been earmarked for Dublin and for the East, which we don't begrudge them, they need them. We've heard today why they need them. But if they cannot give us a meagre 154 million to open a key piece of infrastructure, then that will tell us a great deal about how Arab was constituted and set up to arrive at those conclusions. And you've asked questions there that I think you'd be better addressing to the Department of Transport as to why these reports continually keep coming up with the same answer. There's €1 million, according to the CEO of Ireland Road Éireann, being given to Arab. They are a very reputable group of people, and I would be confident that they will recognise, irrespective of what kind of steering groups are running the review, I am confident that they will recognise, if on the basis of fairness alone, that there has to be development in the rest of Ireland.
Cormac.